sometimes I find myself starting to get really moved into something and to start writing about something. And then I realize that those are times that I should just make a video about it. So I just saw a comment on one of Frank James' videos. Somebody asked him a question about how, if INFJs are so rare, does that mean that they're kind of useless? I'm really like summing up the question, but that's, my takeaway from that. And it just really got me thinking about how, to me, there's like a lot of, to me, in my mind, everything's just like this big puzzle. And, you have all these pieces that are required for things to kind of work. And one of my like biggest takeaways from learning about like MBTI and like different personality types is starting to finally see and understand that really understand like on a deeper level, like finally learning about myself, but opening me up to like learning even more about the ways that other people approach the world and how it's really valuable to have all these different kinds of people and how everybody's different strengths and abilities are all like really important in the grand scheme of things, and how we need all of these different types of people for our world to work. And so I really resonated with this question that this person asked, because I have honestly felt like I've never really fit in. I haven't like found my way of feeling useful. And I kind of talked about this in my last video, of how like I'm really working on trying to find that way to feel useful in a way that feels meaningful and right to me. I've been exploring this for a really long time. It's a series I've been kind of thinking about, is like talking about my adventures as a wage slave, or my ways of trying to find a way to work and serve and be meaningful in this world in a way that feels okay to me. And I feel like maybe, everybody can maybe struggle with this with like the job culture that we have now, but maybe INFJs struggle with it even more because of the fact that a lot of the like gifts or strengths or abilities that come with that approach or that way of seeing the world, and then the way of like functioning in the world, is just like more rare and like less understood. But it doesn't mean that it's useless. It doesn't mean that it's not important. It's just that, to me, it's not valued in our society right now. And ooh, there's a big gust of wind. And this is why I'm really attracted to this idea of like an intuitive movement, because I feel like intuitives as a whole aren't like recognized and valued enough right now. And I feel like it is time for people to start understanding what that can really mean, and starting to really explore and like develop ways to use our intuition, and like and for that to have more value in our society. I often these days kind of think back to somebody, I can't remember where I had heard this, but just in my research I kind of came across somebody who was talking about how an INFJ at one time would have probably been like a shaman or like a mystic in a community, because of the like gifts that they have. And like, since it was valued maybe in that time, those gifts in that person would have been recognized, and that person would have been received like proper training so that they could actually develop those gifts and like feel useful to society afterwards, because those gifts were valued. They were like honed and like used. But now, since that's kind of like been put aside and we don't really put as much value onto those kinds of gifts that are come with that kind of approach to the world and the functions that come with that personality type, or like to me like most intuitive types, we're kind of like left just like drifting or like blending and like kind of forgetting ourselves and trying to work in this world that isn't really made for us, because like the stat that Personality Hacker keeps throwing around is that, you know, there are only 30% of intuitives in a world like dominated by sensors. And so I feel like it's like time for us to step up and like reconnect with this part of ourselves that has been pushed aside, that we've been kind of forced to ignore just because people don't really understand it. Like explore like what being an intuitive really means to you. Like I'm finding a lot of really interesting definitions around that, and starting to have really interesting conversations with other people that I recognize to be intuitive types now that I know what that actually means. And while we can feel useless in this world because our gifts and our strengths aren't recognized, I feel like it's a really good time right now for us to start exploring that and to start like reconnecting and living with that in a way that really speaks to us individually as people in our own like unique ways. Like all of us will have different ways of being kind of like a modern shaman, like if whatever that means to you. Like to me it's just about trying to live like with meaning, trying to find a way to kind of like live my life in a way that's thriving, and maybe like helping or supporting or inspiring other people, or like kind of helping people shift and like reconnect to their kind of like a path that feels good for them, so that they feel like on track for themselves. And like if that is maybe something that INFJs can do, again, Personality Hacker idea around what an INFJ can do in helping humanity process deep emotions. We don't need everybody to be able like to be gifted at doing that, because maybe it's like a really intense kind of work, you know. And so this role, like this piece of the puzzle, isn't useless. It's just it's rare because you don't need so many intuitives in the world. You like need a lot of sensors in the world, you know. There's like a lot of really interesting information on that if these kinds of topics interest you. I really like Personality Hacker. I keep mentioning them, but I've also really liked C.S. Joseph. I've mentioned him in another video, just to get that idea of how all of these different like types have a role to play, and how we can, you know, understand all of the different types and recognize that like their approach and their way of doing things is valuable and important, but so is ours. And, like we are not useless as intuitives. Like we have a very important role to play, in my opinion, especially right now in our world, like where we're at and where things kind of need to start going, because like the intuitives have been kind of cut off, you know. So that's kind of what's coming up for me around this question. I would love to kind of hear your thoughts on this. Always open to hearing, like expanding this, going deeper, hearing your experience with maybe like exploring like your intuition, how if you start to become more connected with your intuition and recognize it as a gift instead of like something that makes you weird because you don't fit in with sensors, or I don't know, I'd just like to hear about like how you've experienced that. And this is something that for me is like becoming like stronger and stronger is something to talk about and to explore, because I think it's really important and can make a really big difference to like intuitive types of people that feel useless, that feel like they don't belong, like something is wrong with them, when really it's just that maybe this world, the way it is right now, isn't necessarily made for us, because it's made for sensors, and it's time for us to start like recognizing what we really need and start like kind of remolding and recreating at least our existence so that it can kind of work for us, and so that we can thrive and actually start to bring our gifts and our abilities to the world in whatever way that feels good to us. So that's all I wanted to say on that for today. Wishing you a lovely day, and talk to you next time.